if a single bomb went off in this country, even if 1,000 bombs went off in this country, all that it will prove is that the Muslims are angry, and they have every reason to be angry.
We want peace. We don't want war. We don't want Australia to be unsafe.
Australians will be attacked. Australians will be hurt. Australians will be killed. Australians will be killed. Australians will be killed. Allahu Akbar.
About 9:44 this morning, at least one gunman, possibly two, walked into the Lindt chocolate shop in Martin Place.
This is a scene that we hope would never come to Sydney. Our beautiful city under siege.
Carly, meanwhile, live breaking news for us right here in the middle of the CBD in Sydney. Heavily armed police are presently converging on Martin Place, where a Sydney cafe right in the middle of Martin Place, you can see hostages have been taken. This is a live shot. Their concerns are there is a gunman or gunmen inside, heavily armed. Currently, heavily armed police have blocked off Martin Place. You can see right behind us in the window here.
They've also, so this is happening just directly outside from where we are. They have closed Phillip Street up behind here. You
can see hostages there with their hands against the windows.
And is there writing in the window? The floor manager's trying to point out that there's some sort of writing, but there are police converging on Martin Place in central Sydney as we speak.
Literally 50 metres from... Oh, well, we're hearing that it appears to be... We'll just wait for confirmation on what we're seeing there. There appears to be some sort of flag in the window. Of that, we can see the faces of hostages. This is live and breaking, 50 metres from where we're standing right now. Heavily armed police, special operations officers on the way. In all of the CBD will be shut down in the next few moments. Please stay with us.
They have shut down part of Martin Place, however, just behind where, if we cut back to the shot here behind us, you can still see plenty of Christmas shoppers are here behind us. Now the police are just starting to move in and move all the shoppers away from the area.
And out of all of our windows here, we're seeing police run, plainclothed and uniformed officers running from every single corner of the city as we speak.
Larry, these are scary and horrific scenes. These would have been... This is a very popular cafe, a chocolate cafe. You can see the name of it there. And it is always full. And at this time of year, school holidays have started for many schools in Sydney. And this is a cafe which is always full of children and families. And they have so many Christmas chocolates in there. So you can only imagine that the place would be packed full of shoppers doing their Christmas chocolate shopping.
Absolutely chilling shots of hostages, and obviously being told to stay in that position, hands up against the glass for all to see.
This is, and as you can just meet us from where we are standing.
All right. As you can imagine, we are all over this. All of our cameras are out across the plaza now.
I'm just going to have a...
We can just see all the pedestrian and traffic has stopped.
Although buses are still rolling behind us here, and that's in Elizabeth Street in Sydney behind us. There's one bus has gone through, another bus is just coming through.
There are 2 or 3 entrances. There's one major entrance to that cafe, which is there on the corner there. But if we pan down to the right a little bit, you'll see another entrance which would appear to be the back, or perhaps it is a staff entrance to that building. There's also a garage behind it as well.
Just here at Channel 7, all of the staff here are being told to get away from the windows. I can hear people on loudspeakers. Larry, can you hear that? We're being told to get away from the windows, which presumably would mean us too. We're standing right in front of this window. There is animated discussion going on with police right behind us.
So...
Can we make out, Tom, the floor manager, can you make out what's being said on the loudspeaker?
No, it's just asking people to stay away from
Asking people to stay away from the area. Okay.
Yeah. So what you can see there, that will be an entrance to the main building, albeit not the cafe as such, but you would think that's perhaps a trades entrance or maybe a delivery entrance. that is the main building next to the cafe, but that is it is a big building and big business, and you would suspect perhaps there is an entrance to the cafe from that point.
But Larry, still no movement inside the cafe. You can still see at the windows shoppers still standing at the windows with their hands up to the window. They're not moving.
And this is frightening and chilling stuff. What you're watching is live. It's happening here in Martin Place, 30, 40 metres from where we're standing. We have cameras all over this for you now. We understand where those police are. That's on the corner of Elizabeth Street and Martin Place. Even they're moving away now. So
Guns have been drawn. If you can see the police officer with the maroon or the pale lilac shirt, he has his gun drawn and they're now retreating. You would wonder what that would indicate.
Yeah, there were a couple of plainclothes guys standing in that secondary doorway. So perhaps if we pan to the right a little bit, there were a couple of guys in that doorway, guns drawn before. We would expect to see very shortly the Special Operations Police on their way. Police very effective in shutting down what is probably one of the busiest parts of Sydney, certainly for this time of year, at this time of day. Martin Place now has been shut down. We understand where those police are. That's on the corner of Elizabeth Street and Martin Place.
Guns have been drawn. If you can see the police officer with the pale lilac shirt, he has his gun drawn.
I'm watching vision live now of heavily armed tactical response officers with body armour on, high-powered weapons at their disposal.
When Tori called me over to come and speak to me, and he was sitting down with Monis, and he looked visibly scared, and he asked me to go and lock the doors of the cafe.
This is a message that I'm reading from someone who's standing in front of me. There's bombs in 3 locations.
Okay.
I need to finish reading this message.
Yes, I understand that. Just hang on a minute.
Sorry, I have a gun in front of me.
Okay.
Australia is under attack by Islamic State. There are 3 bombs in 3 different locations: Martin Place, Circular Quay, and George Street. Police should not come close to me or other brothers, otherwise they will explode the bombs. Some hostages have been taken.
All right, well, you just need to hang on a second.
Traffic 389, urgent.
389.
Radio, I've got 2 female staff members with their hands up at the door. Both of them very visibly distressed. I can't see any further around.
I never saw any wires at any time why they would bring this up and bring this up at the inquest. I had an interview with the police for many, many hours. If I had said that, why wasn't this passed on? Why wasn't this ever brought up? I've never mentioned any wires at any time in any conversation at all. It's simply not the case.
From Little Imp Chocolate Shop, is it?
That's right.
All right, just stay with me on the line, please.
City car, thanks. Any car that can make their way, please. Above Martin Place, Phillip Street, because of Elizabeth Street at Sydney. Informant is currently being held at gunpoint.
I'm now hearing extremely loud explosions.
It was extremely loud, and the colour was just like hundreds and thousands in light.
At this time, Mick Fuller, now New South Wales Police Commissioner, was in command. Of counter-terrorism, Kath Byrne, declared the siege a terrorist event. Specially trained counter-terrorism officers took over the running of the siege. Assistant Commissioner Mark Murdoch replaced Fuller as commander.
At this stage, the operational advice I've got is that we're still determining what it is that may well be the motivation, and at this stage we are still not yet in a position to determine where the individual is from. We are at this stage continuing to secure and make sure that we're doing all we can to bring this to a peaceful outcome. We want this matter resolved peacefully, and we will do all we need to ensure that. Well, we're working through that, and then at this stage we have not got extensive communications. In fact, we're not dealing direct with him.
We do have this situation in hand at the moment. We have our police negotiators on site. They are some of the best in the world, and we are very fortunate that we have these police dealing with the matter at the moment. And a peaceful resolution will be what we are working towards. Police negotiators have had contact, and they continue to have contact, and we will work through this as we do with our negotiators. It might take a bit of time, but we want to resolve this peacefully. This is a very, very well-tested system of negotiation that we use. It is world-class, and it might take a little bit of time, but the safety of those people inside is what is paramount. We are in contact, and we will continue, and the aim is this peaceful resolution.
Byrne's statement was misleading. No direct negotiations ever took place during the entire siege.
I believe I immediately thought it was a terrorist attack, because beforehand there was the news about someone's going to be beheaded in Martin Place, and I work in Martin Place.
What he wanted was for a major news outlet to say that this was an attack by the Islamic State on Australia, exactly what he told us in the cafe when he first took us hostage. And so he had us trying to call the ABC, trying to call SBS, Al Jazeera, Sydney Morning Herald.
ABC reception advice.
Hi, my name is Jared Morton Hoffman. I'm currently a hostage at Martin Place. I've been asked by the brother of the Islamic State that he is willing to exchange one hostage for a flag of the Islamic State if the media reports that this is an attack on Australia by the Islamic State, because the politicians are not telling the truth about the situation.
Monis had been monitored by state and federal police and ASIO for years. The New South Wales Terrorism Intelligence Unit warned of his potential to become a terrorist in the future. They watched as the views he expressed on his website and on Facebook became more extreme. In November, he pledged allegiance to Islamic State and posted photos of children killed in airstrikes in Syria. One agency noted, "It appears Sheikh Haron is a supporter of ISIS on social media." Detectives convinced 7 women to make statements. They recounted harrowing details of Monis's sexual assaults and his threats of black magic. Police discovered records of over 500 clients, some of whom went to a local lawyer for help.
I wouldn't say the names, but in some females that they approached my office and they told me stories about his spiritual healings. I was told by them that he was first very gentle and really represented himself as a person to be trusted, as a professional, but later on, very soon, when they started the process of healing, they felt they were violated.
Just how much Monis was misunderstood was brought home at the inquest, where the psychiatrist and the lead negotiator downplayed the violence of Monis's sexual assaults. Peter argued there was no anger or weapons used. It was a passive sexual assault environment, he said. There's no violence there. The psychiatrist repeatedly described the sexual assaults of frightened women as acts of seduction. Hearing his testimony was one of the hardest days for the families.
It was an affront. The psychiatrist doesn't even have an understanding of what violence against women is.
I just don't know how we can get to that place and start segmenting these sexual assaults into violent and non-violent, given what they were and given how they were perpetrated.
That is just outrageous, and it really puts everything else into context again, what we're dealing with here from the police side of things, right? I mean, what can we as the public say if there's anyone in the police force and their advisors that views these crimes as I don't know, not really crimes? I'm speechless.
Like so many others at the inquest, his identity was suppressed. Did you get the sense that his views were influential?
I think they were very influential. They certainly influenced the negotiation cell because he was supposed to be just an advisor to the negotiators. In fact, it seems that he was a lot more than that.
The main issue for me is that the psychiatrist, part of the negotiating team, he was quite unfamiliar with the subject of Islamic State.
By 3 p.m, Monis's identity was finally confirmed at Siege Command. In the first crucial teleconference about Monis at 3:35 p.m, the psychiatrist told commanders Monis was not a bona fide terrorist. Unaware of the recent call to arms by Islamic State, he asserted there were no signs of ISIS involvement or ISIS methodology. The psychiatrist said Monis was grandstanding. Siege Commander Assistant Commissioner Mark Murdoch formed the view that Monis was bluffing and would not harm the hostages.
When the psychiatrist declared that Monis wasn't a terrorist, it just seemed like we were in the twilight zone, where we had the counter-terrorism unit in charge, and yet we had the psychiatrist declaring that the perpetrator wasn't a terrorist. I mean, what was going on?
In stark contrast to the commander's view, a report by the Police Intelligence Unit circulated at the same time said Monis had a propensity for violence and the capability of injuring the hostages. Amongst the negotiating team, a view was taking hold, questioning Monis's capacity for violence. A revealing conversation about the murder of his ex-wife was accidentally captured on a dictaphone. The lead negotiator, Peter, says, he's not a violent man as such. He just likes a bit of power. The psychiatrist acknowledges danger exists, but asks, does he have the ticker for it? I don't think he does, a negotiator replies, because he got his missus to kill his other one. Peter says, he doesn't do it. He gets someone else to do it. The psychiatrist listened in on the hostage debriefs. At the inquest, he said he didn't take Paolo's threat assessment seriously. He said Paolo was highly excited and he didn't listen to him terribly much because he was babbling.
For him to make all those accusations about myself is completely wrong. And maybe the police psychiatrist is upset because everything I said was spot on. I said, if you don't, not to wait, he will shoot. That's what will happen. Don't wait for this guy.
Okay, so the message says, to people, to be free. If politicians say to media that this is an attack by the Islamic State, on Australia.
It was frustrating because you're in the middle of it. You're in the middle of this battle between two parties, and you're the one. It's your life at stake, not theirs. But they're not changing the way that they're approaching the situation when it's clearly not working.
Peter, the negotiator. Can I get
Yes, it calls from this number.
Hello. Who's this?
It's Jared.
Oh, Jared, how you going? And they've been talking to Peter.
Basically, the guy just says to me that if you don't have the flag, don't bother calling again.
If you don't have the flag, don't call again.
Yes.
And how'd you get this number, Jared?
This is the number you've been calling off. I have to go. Goodbye.
Okay, bye.
I'll print you a flag.
Yeah, it's easy. Everyone can print whatever.
If you let the pregnant lady go, I'll print you a flag.
If you have a
I'll print you
printer.
100. I'll paint everything.
Yes. The point is that they will bring the one flag here.
They misread the individual very, very badly. They also sort of misread the changed circumstances of the world we live in, which relates to Islamic State. There wasn't enough weighting given to the possibility that this was a serious terror attack in play, a martyrdom attack that would end in lives being lost, and that there wouldn't be any way to negotiate a peaceful ending.
Before the siege, Monis reported to Campsie Police Station a condition of bail for the murder charges he faced. He made his final inflammatory post that day, accusing Australia of terrorism and calling on Muslims to respond.
We know from research around the world that people who are either actually affiliated to Islamic State or claim to be are often suffering from some form of delusional disorder. They can be very violent. And the worst thing about them is that often they have no expectation of survival. The psychiatrist expressed a view around the threat posed by Monis, which quite frankly I think was wrong. He'd been involved in sort of violent and sexual offending in the past. He clearly had animosity towards the state. He declared his allegiance to Islamic State. It matters not, in my mind, that he was not displaying the sort of, if you like, traditional IS methodology. The fact that in his mind he felt that he was an IS, if you like, sympathiser, there's every chance that he had no expectation of survival and that he fully intended to kill all the hostages.
The text said, "Tell the police the lobby door is unlocked. He's sitting in the corner on his own."
I thought, great, he's sitting by himself in the corner. This is the time the police are going to go in. I basically yelled out and the detective came and he had a look at the message and he said he will pass it on.
Siege Commander Mark Murdoch got this critical information but didn't act on it. He'd already decided against a preemptive strike.
We have heavily armed tactical police who are outside the Lint Cafe in Martin Place, and inside we have one man with a gun.
By now, the head of the tactical team surrounding the cafe was urging Murdoch to change that approach and approve a rescue plan, known as a deliberate action or a DA.
A DA is something that gives commanders the tactical advantage because they can initiate it at a time of their choosing.
Deputy Chief Constable Simon Chesterman is the UK's leading expert on police armed interventions. He conducted the inquest's review of police tactics.
Deliberate action is always preferable because it's you have time to plan it. It's planned, it's briefed, it's rehearsed. It's absolutely vital to have that in place.
But Murdoch refused to authorise the plan. Did it ever cross your mind that the police weren't coming?
Not while I was in the room. I just assumed that that's what our police did, that they rescued us. So I was waiting for that and thinking, let's just keep it all calm here. Let's just play his game and wait for the police. They'll come.
The new police commissioner, Mick Fuller, now admits that was a critical error.
I think there was still great hope in the command centres that we could, as we have in the past with other sieges, contain and negotiate our way without the loss of life.
But you're now saying that was a mistake.
In hindsight, with everything we know now, Sarah, is that we certainly should have gone in earlier. The challenge in that, of course, is that that doesn't guarantee there won't be a loss of life. But clearly, a deliberate action is a much more professional action.
Nighttime descended on Martin Place.
Dark came, and with the darkness came a change of tone.
You could tell that there was that fragility, that ego that was cracking a little bit, that he wasn't actually 100% in control. And as that happened, he became more and more erratic to kind of counterweigh the fact that he was losing control of the situation.
Moniz ordered Fiona Ma to switch off the lights.
I don't know what his motive was, for sure. He just wanted us to be in the dark.
But it was never completely dark. Christmas lights cast an eerie glow into the cafe.
There was the obvious street lights, but because it was around Christmas time, they had the Christmas tree, but they also had this semi-reflective material on all the banners outside, and it would reflect light into the cafe. And so I think he wanted to like reduce visibility for any police outside.
And it became the thing that he was become obsessed with, getting the lights turned out.
At 8:30, Commissioner Andrew Scipione made his last public appearance of the day. The strategy remained the same.
Our plan, our only goal tonight, and for as long as this takes, is to get those people that are currently caught in that building out of there safely. That remains our number one priority, and nothing will change. What's happening inside those premises are things that will need to be resolved amongst our negotiators. We have the very best negotiators in the world on the job right now.
A little bit of a hint from the New South Wales Police Commissioner that they are in no rush. Andrew Scipione is in no rush here, and his commanders are in no rush either. They're happy to wait. The decision at the moment rests with someone else. It rests with one man, and it's up to him how this thing ends.
I had a potential fear that they would not act in time and that I would have to act in their stead, because it felt like the police were very happy to maintain a status quo, but for us inside, and especially for Moniz, he was not happy to maintain a status quo.
Katrina Dawson had a husband and 3 young children waiting for her.
For Katrina, she was really at that point of in her prime, right, with these 3 gorgeous kids who she absolutely adored, a wonderful husband, her career where she'd gone to the bar a few years before, and it was really flourishing now.
A perfect 100 in the higher school certificate, awards and a first in law at university, highest score in her New South Wales bar exams. Katrina's potential was limitless.
When you're blessed with the brain she was blessed with, you know, when you're blessed with that kind of, all the things that could be right in the world happened for Katrina, and she basically lived every moment to the full. But I think to have humility in amongst all of that is probably a bigger sign of greatness than anything else, in a sense.
Despite the anxiety in the cafe, Katrina maintained her composure.
She was just very calm throughout the whole day, even in the bathrooms. I don't remember like what we talked about, but just the feeling I got from her was that she was very calm. And that's, I don't know, I just liked her very much, I remember. And some people, I felt needed comfort, but there were also some people who I felt gave me comfort, and Katrina was one of them. Yeah. So I was very grateful for that.
Tori Johnson, the manager of the cafe, was targeted by Moniz from the beginning. Throughout the siege, he too showed grace under pressure.
I just was resting my head, and I looked at him, and he looked at me, and he gave me one of those Tory smiles, the half smile. And for a split second, I was reassured that we're gonna be okay.
He didn't need words to make you feel how special you were to him. he always thought of others, always, and always thinking of other people's feelings, always trying to make better of a situation.
Tori and his partner Thomas studied hotel management in Switzerland and lived together all over the world. They were weeks from taking a new position overseas. At 10:30 p.m, Moniz told some of the hostages to call their families. Thomas was taking a brief walk away from the reception centre when his phone rang.
Well, I was surprised when I picked up the phone that Tori was on the other end, and immediately I was in this mode of he's calling me, he's using the phone. I wonder if Moniz knows. I'm really worried that he's doing something that could put him into a dangerous situation. And so I expressed that straight away. You know, I said, why are you calling me? You know, you shouldn't be doing that. He did say, it's okay. I think he might have said I'm allowed to, but I did not register that. And I said to him that I love him, and he said, I'm very scared. And he started to cry. And I said to him that we are all here, all his family is here. We're here to support you. And I said, don't do anything silly. Stay calm. And then we hung
up. After the phone call, Tori was really inconsolable. He was really upset. He was crying. Tori was crying a lot. I wanted to just get up and give him a hug, but I couldn't.
At headquarters, the daytime police commanders handed over control of the siege. Assistant Commissioner Mark Jenkins assumed command. He would be there at the end. The head of the tactical team was still pushing his commanders for approval of a rescue operation. His team had drawn up a plan, and the Army's elite tactical assault group had tested it at a mock-up of the Lindt Cafe at their barracks. Mark Jenkins refused to approve it.
The plan was a good plan. It had been worked out by some very professional and experienced officers. It had been briefed, it had been rehearsed, it had been endorsed by the Australian Defence Force. So, to all intents and purposes, it was a really good plan, and it was their best chance of resolving the siege with minimal damage and injury. You know, can you imagine being in a situation where you're responsible for those people's lives and you haven't got the best possible plan in place? I would have been screaming out for it.
One of the key drivers of the refusal to act was the fear Moniz had a bomb, as he'd claimed at the beginning of the siege. But attempts to investigate that possibility were also mishandled. Police were sent to Moniz's address in Wiley Park, but sat outside for hours. The order to search the house wasn't given until 11:30 p.m, 12 hours after he was first identified.
I think searching his house was a critical inquiry that should have taken place earlier. The greatest threat that they were aware of was the backpack, and therefore any intelligence that they could glean around whether that was a viable IED or not would have changed the course of the strategy.
The head of counter-terrorism, Kath Byrne, had already left for the night. At 11:30 p.m, Commissioner Scipione also went home. Would you go home?
Where the Commissioner sleeps will never have an outcome on the performance of an operation, but it's clear the community's expectation, if you are the leader, not the commander, if you are the leader, that you are there for the long haul, and I totally accept that.
There was no rest for the exhausted hostages in the cafe.
Where I was sitting, you can see the clock from the hallway, because the light was on there. So that's how I knew what time it was. And I keep looking at the clock. It was very quiet and very, very cold.
Moniz told Harriet and Jared to bring food from the kitchen.
It was part of that manipulative act to kind of get us on his side. It was kind of this like bizarre Last Supper of sitting down with trays of food, surrounded by a bunch of people you know, and then a guy that's gonna kill you.
I sent my final message to my family.
You thought it was your final message?
Yes.
What made you think that?
Because it was late at night. It was dark, it was late at night. The police haven't come.
Moniz was obsessing again about the Christmas lights. He told the hostages to call the negotiators. In the middle of a long shift change, the negotiator's number rang out 4 times.
614. Selena had made the call and the phone's ringing, no answer. And then she finally gets through to 000 and they're saying, ring the negotiators, and Selena's saying, we tried, you know, they're not answering.
Hello, Selena, how are you?
I'm going to get shot in 15 minutes if you don't have these lights switched off. You don't know how close I just came. Could you please have these lights switched off? I have 15 minutes.
Selena,
or I'm going to get shot with a rifle.
Selena, I can assure you, I've told the boss that, you know, we want to get those lights off. They're getting looked at, but they're not, they're council lights, they're City of Sydney lights.
Moniz at that time had become probably near the most erratic he was in the day, getting fed up that nothing had happened, being angry, being resentful. And I think I was worried that we were hitting the point of that inevitable last stand if those lights weren't turned off.
At 1:35 a.m, the psychiatrist briefed siege commanders on Moniz's state of mind. He told them there were no overt signs of violence towards the hostages. Police noted high confidence in the negotiation strategy.
The negotiation strategy wasn't going anywhere. It wasn't achieving anything, it wasn't adapting, and the threat was increasing.
At 1:43, Tory Johnson texted his family. He's increasingly agitated, walks around when he hears a noise outside with a hostage in front of him, wants to release one person out of good faith. Tell police.
So that text said that Moniz is getting more agitated. He is walking around with a hostage. He would like to release a hostage, tell the police. So again, obviously we relayed that information immediately.
I just wished, I know it seems silly, I just wished I wanted to be there with him. You know, I just wanted to put my arms around him and just whatever was going to happen, I wanted to be there with him.
Tory's text about Moniz's agitation wasn't passed on. It never reached the siege commanders. Moniz quickly changed his mind about releasing a hostage. Despite the escalating tension, minutes later, the psychiatrist told police the cafe was settling down for the night. It was probably better he has a rest.
It wasn't settling down. Moniz was not calm. He was worse towards the end. So worse that I was getting ready. I actually told Joel, I whispered to him, I said, turn around so he can run towards the door.
There is no way that a lone gunman by himself, hopped up on, you know, caffeine pills, is in a position of going, all right, guys, have a good night. We're going to go to sleep now. Wake up 6 a.m. tomorrow morning and start our little siege again. So it was always clear to me, ever since negotiation failed, that it was going to end sooner rather than later, before he fell asleep, in a moment of violence.
Just before 2 a.m, Moniz was disturbed by sounds in the rear of the cafe.
He starts to believe that he's hearing someone enter through the emergency exit, the one at the back.
He's becoming more and more paranoid and concerned, and rightfully so. He's probably thinking something's got to be happening soon. So he decides to go with Jared and Selena and Fiona to the kitchen to investigate the noises.
As we hit in front of that side door, the one that's open and debarricaded, he tells me to stop and wait there.
Selena was behind, holding the backpack, and Moniz told him, don't touch the backpack. And Fiona was at the front with the gun to her either head or back.
He took us to the window because he actually saw the reflection of police on the window of the opposite building. So he was pointing at the police, asking us, do you see that? Do you see that? So you think, you know, is this what's gonna trigger him to use his gun? And you're standing right next to him, so will you be the one? Will you be the first one? Yeah.
A sniper in the reserve bank, watching through the window, thought Moniz was about to release or to execute Fiona or Selena.
He brought us to the back door, and I suspect it's because he thought there were police behind that door. And he told me to start barricading the door with boxes.
I don't know when the police is coming in. I don't know if they're going to come in before one of us is shot.
Jared was standing at the side door.
I remember we sort of had a look towards Jared and then we're all kind of looking at each other.
I looked around, saw that there was pretty much most of the people in the room. I start to hear a shuffling, as in someone's moving boxes, and I immediately go, he's moving, he's opening that door. And I just look around to everyone and say, I'm going, let's go. And just open that door and run.
I was holding on to her and I said, just wait a minute, it's the ambulance, let me assess you. And she basically fell to the ground. As she fell to the ground, she was still trying to crawl. She was basically crawling and clawing at the concrete to get away. Yeah. She did mention, you have to go back in there, he's going to kill them all.
I'm in absolutely no doubt that as soon as that shot was fired in the stronghold, the EA should have been called. Clearly the operators on the ground, the people that were going to do the intervention, thought the same. They were stacking up ready along the left-hand aspect of the cafe as you look at it, testing torches, making weapons ready, etc. They clearly expected to be asked to go in, and with hindsight, that was the point where the EA should have been initiated.
The forward commander ordered them not to move. He said, we hadn't reached that absolute trigger point of death or serious injury. The forward commander said he couldn't order an emergency action to rescue the remaining hostages for fear of a bomb. He said, when I got to the point, I could not commit to the EA. I was sending those police in to die.
I can understand why families would struggle with that in terms of the fact that perhaps the police are not going to do anything until one of their loved ones is either killed or seriously injured. It's hugely difficult to justify after the event. I think it has to be reflected on the fact that the police were in a very, very difficult situation, but they are there to put themselves in harm's way to protect the public. So a difficult call, but in my view, the wrong tipping point.
When the 6 hostages ran, Tory Johnson chose to stay behind with Louisa and Robin Hope.
I said to Tory, you go. And he said, no, I'll stop here with you.
He could have bolted out that door, and no one would have blamed him to have left.
my mother and indeed even me behind. But he didn't do that.
Seven hostages remained, including Katrina Dawson, now trapped in the corner behind Monis.
He was panicked, really panicked, and he didn't know what to do. And then he decided that we would be positioned either side of him. And then he called Tori.
Holding a gun to Tori's back, Monis moved him in front of the windows. The sniper in the building opposite was watching. There is dispute amongst police as to whether he reported what he saw. The listening device picked up what happened next. Monis said, "Manager, stand there. There. Don't move." Monis loaded his shotgun and said, "The manager, put your hand on your head. You will not move."
Tori was distressed. He was crying. And then he knelt. He indicated with his gun where he wanted Tori to kneel. So Tori knelt down and put his hands on his head.
Another sniper radioed in that Tori was on his knees. It's unclear who heard the report. Tori Johnson was placed on his knees. Police saw that. Wasn't that a moment to go in?
Absolutely. Well, and again, I would have much preferred that we had gone in a much more controlled environment under a deliberate action. But knowing what we know now, I don't know who would suggest that it wasn't the time to go in.
He was alive, and he deserved to have hope that someone was going to come in and save him. I just can't imagine how he felt in that time, and I wish I'd been there with him.
5 minutes passed, with Tori on his knees. Monis was heard to say, "Don't move. If you don't move, you are safe." Monis then fired his weapon over Tori's head.
And then he shot up into a window, up to the far right corner. Tori fell forward with a thud. And he still had his hands behind his head as he fell forward. And then there was still time after that.
It was a horrible sound, and to be so close was horrible.
He fell actually over from the trauma of the shot, probably thinking he was hit. And then he composed himself and put himself up on his knees again into that same position.
While Tori waited on his knees, Fiona Marr was still hiding at the back of the cafe.
It's a long time when you're just standing there waiting for someone to come in. Could have been the police or it could have been Monis. But I don't know. I thought I was just alone. I don't know, like that. So I thought, I didn't know what was happening, but if the police weren't coming in now, then maybe I have to make my own way out.
I saw him reach into his pocket. Actually, he put the bullets are in his right hand leg. He had cargo pants on, pocket, and he put the bullet, and it was red, I think, from my memory, and he put it into the gun.
I heard noise that sounded like reloading, and then I just made a run for it straight to the Phillips Street door, because I thought, he can't shoot me if he's reloading now. I ran across, and then I found the police, and then...
10 minutes had passed since Monist first fired his gun.
It just seemed to be such a long time. And Tory was kneeling up, not on his haunches or anything, just kneeling up with his hands on the back of his head.
In the silence of that eerie moment, the listening device picks up a mobile phone vibrating in the cafe. It was the negotiators trying to ring. Monist says, "You'll be right, everyone. You'll be fine." Those were the last words Tory heard.
Monist stood behind him and shot him in his head.
And I'm glad that I didn't actually see it happening, but I was right immediately there.
Did you look at him again?
Yes. Oh.
The forward commander said it was only at that moment, after Monist had killed Tory, that he was justified in sending in police.
I just don't understand. I don't understand anything of what the police decided to do or not do. And it is very evident that they cannot explain it themselves.
Have they got anywhere close to giving you an answer that you can live with?
No, the opposite, actually. Not all of them, but many of, the responsible people of that day have given evidence that is very surprising and devastating, to the point where it was said, if this situation would occur again, we would make the same decisions again.
It was the forward commander who said that.
And that just leaves me speechless. And that cannot happen.
Is it possible for you to explain to me what you lost?
Everything that was meaningful in my life.
He knew that he was going to die, and he died with such dignity. Something that I would have liked to have heard from the police at the inquest. Not a word.
What would you say?
I agree. But don't assume from that we all don't carry this and we won't carry it for the rest of our lives.
2 teams were supposed to enter the cafe from either side at the same time to overwhelm Monist. One team ran up Phillip Street from the loading dock.
He was waiting for the police to come, as we were. He was expecting them to come in through the front door because he was kept prepping. He was ready for the police to come.
The other team had only meters to cross the foyer to reach the side doors. But an officer threw a flashbang grenade at the closed glass doors. It bounced off and detonated in front of the assault team.
Tactically, that's wrong in terms of actually trying to throw it through the glass, and actually we had intelligence as well that door was open, so it wouldn't have been difficult just to pull the door ajar and roll a flashbang into the room.
The team leader stopped to adjust his goggles, losing valuable seconds. An officer opened the door as others threw more flashbangs, causing 18 explosions in the foyer.
Ultimately, there were a lot thrown into a confined space and they weren't wearing any hearing protection. That's bound to have affected them.
The team recoiled and an officer let the cafe door close. The other team had already reached the entrance of the cafe. Moniz fired twice and missed. Three officers, A, B, and a shield carrier, confronted Moniz, who was on the far side of the cafe, close to the side doors. The foyer team was still outside. Katrina and Marcia were on the ground a metre or so apart behind Moniz. Officer A fixed his laser sight on Moniz's chest and fired 17 rounds in 3 seconds. Most were direct hits. Some travelled through furniture. Moniz fell to the ground, dead. Officer B also fired his gun, but fell over, grazed by a ricocheting bullet fragment. Only now, the foyer team entered the cafe.
It would have been better if the team had managed to enter simultaneously through the lobby, because they may have had a cleaner shot at Moniz. Clearly, the tactic was to incapacitate him as quickly as possible. The fact that the foyer team was balked by the distraction device and by other things meant that that tactical option wasn't available to them. So Officer A had to confront the threat, had to deal with Moniz.
Katrina's husband was watching the events unfold on television.
Paul rang at 2 something and said, have you got the TV on? And we said, no. And he said, well, you better turn it on. And we watched that, and that's when I said, oh, my God, they've killed her. Just knew they'd killed her.
Katrina Dawson was hit by multiple bullet fragments and was fatally wounded. After 18 months of inquest, the only certainty is the bullet or bullets which killed her came from a police gun. In the aftermath, the bomb squad went into the cafe. In Moniz's backpack, they found an audio speaker, but no bomb. Video camera running.
Is it open? Is it open?
This was now fighting to win custody of their children.
Is it open? Daddy. How are you? Very nice, very nice. Can Negar play soccer or basketball? Which one is better? You need to hold my hand. What? Hold my hand, please. Thank you. He's close to the street.
Moniz had organised an elaborate alibi for himself. A day out with friends.
Do you have the soccer ball?
He filmed his every movement.
Okay. Can you please hold hand? Pass this. Street cross quickly. Come.
The softly spoken Moniz played the concerned father.
Start now. Okay. First we start soccer. Basketball. Oh, look at this. Okay, slowly. Is it cold? After a while, then we'll be all right. When you are cold, let me know. You need to come out. Your towel is ready now. Wow.
The children were due to be picked up at the apartment at 4.
Stream, the video is on.
As the hour approached, Moniz recorded timestamps to prove he was far away from the scene of the crime.
No, I think your time is not exact because this is 10 minutes to 4. Is it? 2 minutes. 1 minute is behind. Open the window.
As Moniz got ready to leave the pool,
she was attacked, allegedly by another woman, in the stairwell.
Leaving his children with a friend filmed him swerving intentionally towards a police van. He feigned injury and was taken to Nepean Hospital.
I want to know why you are here.
Man, I'll inform you that your former partner is dead.
She was involved in an accident in your unit complex earlier this afternoon.
My ex-partner?
Yes, that's correct.
What do you mean?
I'm afraid she's passed away. She's died earlier this afternoon.
Maybe someone else. Maybe it's someone else.
I'm afraid not.
When? Oh, what has happened?
That's what we're investigating at the moment. We're hoping that you could assist us with some information in regards to any of the aspects that would be surrounding what's happened to her. Please feel free.
Stop the recording.
The following day, the two children were at home with Monis.
Hello.
Hello.
With the woman who had just murdered their mother.
Delicious. Delicious. Good night. We sleep early because tomorrow morning we want to go for breakfast to McDonald's. Okay, good night.
It's not a storybook, but it's a book with lots of interesting things.
Monis filmed the scene, purporting to show themselves as a happy family unit,
Love to do that.
even referring to Drudis as mummy.
You want mommy lay down here and read books for you?
Yeah. If you have a story.
The children were later removed to live with their grandparents, but Monis and Drudis fought to regain custody, even as the murder investigation closed in.
The fact that the DPP didn't oppose bail was extraordinary, but what was even more extraordinary was they tried to have any consideration of bail excluded from the inquest. And so when a lot of the documents came in from the DPP, they were very heavily redacted, so we couldn't see them. Our legal counsel couldn't see them. You had people from the DPP in the witness box, not recall, I don't recall, I don't recall. I mean, it was just extraordinary.
In the name of Allah, the most merciful and most beneficent. Welcome to... no, wait, come. No, I can't. I don't know what to say and I made a mistake. I need to know what I'm saying.